Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the world. I'm not going to bother introducing myself because a lot of you probably already know I'm Zach Jones. Welcome back to my channel, but if you're new to my channel, then welcome. As I mentioned before, I'm reshooting some old PowerPoint presentations. One of them that I have been having a fair few requests to refilm is the 20 Animals of Great Britain. And of course, I'm coming here to show you all that my home in Britain, because I'm British, because people always say that British wildlife is just tame and boring and it's not as good as like Africa or Asia, but I'm here to prove to you all that we have our fair share of incredible wildlife right here in the British Isles. I'm going to start with my favourite animal and the sky equivalent of a cheetah, the Peregrine Falcon. And of course, peregrines are found in many parts, in fact they're found all over the world, but of course these peregrines particularly live in London, which is the capital city of England. And of course, peregrines have been my favourite animals for all of my life really, and I've seen them in urban towns or cities many times over the years. And of course, like in many birds of prey, female is bigger than the male, but they are the fastest animal that has ever lived. Ever. Full stop. And of course, cities aren't usually the typical backdrop for a peregrine. I mean, a more natural habitat or natural backdrop would be somewhere wild, rugged and cliff-faced, perhaps at the coast. So cities aren't the ideal place for a peregrine, but they are perfect for them because, I mean, to begin with, peregrines weren't always so successful in cities. Like, urban sprawl meant their old homes were destroyed to make way for skyscrapers. But around the 1950s, after DDT, which was a pesticide introduced into the food chain that thinned the eggshells of birds of prey and that badly affected peregrines, was banned, the numbers began to increase, and of course they adapted to live in cities. And one of the main reasons for that is that urban skyscrapers offer them the requirements that their usual homes of cliff faces and cliffs along the coast give them places for them to nest and raise their chicks, as well as a place to get a bird's eye view of their habitat, well, of their territories, I mean. But of course, the main thing that brings peregrines to cities is their favourite food, pigeons. Now, pigeons are probably the most successful urban bird. And of course, they flock to city centres because of the amount of food that there is left for them. And peregrines act almost like pest control from above, taking out pigeons and keeping their populations in perfect balance. And of course, also, around the coming of spring brings new demands on peregrines hunting, demands that will stretch them to their limit because there are new mouths to feed. And peregrines will mate for life, and they usually have 2 or 4 chicks in a breeding season. And of course, if the chicks are going to be able to grow old enough to fly the nest, their parents have to catch at least 2 pigeons a day for a month. And that will be the biggest challenge of their lives. Of course, a peregrine's secret weapon when it comes to hunting is speed. However, in a flat-out flight, a pigeon can outfly a peregrine because pigeons can fly at 61 miles per hour and they have enormous hearts and lungs which give them phenomenal stamina. So, what the Peregrine does is it will ride the updraft, that are warm currents of air created by the city, and they will rise up to just over a mile above the city, and then they will use their phenomenal eyesight, because at the base of each retina they have two focal sensors where human beings have only one. And of course, they have probably the most advanced vision of any bird in Britain, because they can spot a pigeon from over a mile away. Of course, once they spot their targets, the peregrine will then fold in its wings and drop out of the sky. Yeah, and of course, their top speed can be over 200 miles per hour. Of course, as they dive, airflow rushes through a peregrine's nostrils and it could explode its lungs. However, peregrines have special cones just inside their nostrils that slow down the airflow before it hits the lungs. And of course, they also have a third eyelid, a nictitating membrane, which wipes their eyes to clear them of debris and stop them drying out. Both those designs are actually so effective that they're now used in jet engines. Of course, once the peregrine is right close to its victim, at the moment before impact, it will swing its 5 centimetre talons forward, and then boom! The force of the blow could snap a pigeon's backbone, killing it instantly. But if the pigeon is still alive once the peregrine has got hold of it, it will use its beak to just basically dislocate the neck and kill the pigeon like that. And then it will carry it back to its nest to feed its chicks. Of course, both parents, the male and the female, will take turns going out hunting and looking after the chicks. But of course, despite their speed, peregrines don't have a very good strike rate, with only 1 in 5 hunts, or 20% of their attacks, ending in a kill. But of course, despite their challenges and their low strike rate, urban peregrines are on the rise. To this day, over 30 breeding pairs of the world's fastest animals now soar over London, making that the second largest population of urban peregrines in the world, second only to New York. Of course, those are two adult peregrines. They have a greyish-blue back, but that right there is a juvenile that has just come into, just starting to fly, and once they grow old enough to fly their nest, they will usually learn from their parents the skills they need to hunt and fly before they go off to find their own territories. Of course, the peregrines are found across much of Britain, because it's amazing of how much of a comeback they've been making over the years, because when my mum was a teenager, you had to go right here to the wilds of Wales to see them, because now you can go into a city and just see them anywhere. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is one of the most ferocious predators in all of Britain. It is the stoat. Now, stoats may look cute and cuddly, but I really would not advise trying to give one a cuddle, because these are in the weasel family, and of course the weasel family are a group of animals well known for ferocity, bravery, punching above their weight, and taking out animals many times their own size. Of course, a stoat may only grow to about a metre long, and it has a dark brown back with a black tail tip and a white underside, but despite its small appearance, it has formidable teeth. In fact, it has very long canine teeth and bone-crushing teeth. And as I said, they would quite happily take on animals many times their own size. of course, stoats will mate for life, and they'll usually have 8 to 10 young called kits. And of course, when the young are born, the male is usually busy defending their territory from rivals, so it usually falls to the female to provide them with food, but the male will help out whenever he can. And of course, stoats will feed on a variety of things. In fact, they feed on mammals like rats, mice, voles, as well as birds, lizards, frogs, but incredibly their favourite prey of all are rabbits. Now, rabbits can be 8 times the weight of an adult stoat, and of course they're armed with powerful hind legs that can deliver a lethal kick that could be fatal. Of course, the stoat has many methods of catching prey. I mean, it can climb, it can swim, it can go into the burrows of animals. Also, with an incredibly flexible body, or it could run its prey, chase after its prey until it gets completely tired and then pounce on it with a bite to the neck. Or, believe it or not, it will dance. And I know that might sound a bit balmy, but there is method in that, because for some reason when the stoat performs its dance moves like jumps and jives in a field of rabbits, I mean, it seems to put the rabbits under a spell. They just seem mesmerised and don't run away. No one's actually quite sure why they don't run away. And of course, the stoat just edges closer and closer and then bang! And of course, it's that dance of death that allows the stoat to tackle adult rabbits that are 8 times their own weight. And of course, stoats are found in many habitats across Britain, like farmland, moorland, heathland, woodland, and occasionally in urban areas. And of course, right here, there's a stoat that is changed almost completely white, and that's all down to the fact that when winter comes along, they need to change their fur colour to match the snow. And of course, that gives them best camouflage. And stoats aren't endangered at all, but even so, they're very shy and elusive creatures and very rarely seen. But also, I really would not advise trying to give one a hug, because if you did, you'd probably end up getting your hand ripped to shreds. This is the range of the stoat. As you can see, they're found all across Britain, even right up here, in the far north of I think it's the Shetland Islands. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is one of our largest and probably our most iconic bird of prey, the golden eagle. Now, golden eagles are found in Scotland, but I will get to that a bit later. I mean, although they may not be our largest bird of prey, that title of course belonging to the white-tailed eagle, the golden eagle is without question Britain's most iconic bird of prey. Of course, for thousands of years, this bird's image has been used to symbolise majesty, strength and victory. I mean, for example, soldiers of Rome marched behind the eagle's standards that represented the honour of their army units. Of course, as I mentioned in another PowerPoint, the golden eagle was also the only bird in falconry in the medieval era that the king was allowed to fly. But the eagle's power as an image has also led it into darker associations, like when it was shown clutching the swastika in its talons on the uniforms of countless German soldiers fighting for the Nazis in World War II. But, I mean, the golden eagle is, despite the vast empires it represents, in Britain, it's only found in in Scotland, to be precise, the Highlands of Scotland, where about 440 pairs currently nest.